which played quite nicely just a second ago. Hello, everybody. My name is Mikko Nieminen, and I'm with my good friend Johannes Verwijnen, good friend and a business partner.
Good point.
We both have a similar background, about 25 years of professional software development, and now we're full-time instructors delivering cloud courses and things about modern software development. That's our quick introduction. Johannes, you'd like to add something there?
No, I'm happy with the way that you introduced me. No puns this time.
Good. Didn't insult you yet?
Not yet.
I'm based in Finland, Helsinki, Finland, and Johannes is based in Portugal. And let's start by comparing temperatures.
It's really cold here. It's like 11 degrees
Celsius.
Yeah.
So plus 11.
Yes.
I'm not sure how cold it is right now, but in the morning it was -20 and windy, which makes it super cold. And that's like -4 in Fahrenheit or something like that. So
yeah, at least you got some insulation in your buildings.
Yeah, we definitely do. So it's t-shirts for me indoors always, summers and winters. So that's the big difference between Helsinki and Portugal.
Yeah.
Today we're going to talk about year 2023.
Yeah.
What happened and what happened personally and professionally, and what were the highlights of the year. So we are not that focused only on, let's say, new things regarding a specific service or specific one topic. We're rambling about all kinds of things here. So that's my plan.
Okay, let's see.
Let's see what happens. And 2023. For me, maybe I will begin this by stopping my alarm clock there. Lots of things happened in 2023, and for me, it actually started, or I will start this by saying that 2022 was a little bit too busy for me, like professionally and personally. And when the year changed, I was happy to not do too much of work. Beginning of the year is quite quiet from the point of view of an instructor, but also it was a bit too quiet, and I stayed away from all the extra things. Maybe I should have done a little bit more, but let's say after a long pause, I found motivation again to study a little bit more. As an instructor, we need to study all the time. We need to stay on top of things. We need to focus on the courses that we're delivering to really know what's going on and what are the new small things that change in the background as services evolve regarding those topics that we teach. But I found my motivation again, and I started studying. And when you have motivation and you study, it's super fun, at least for me. Although, as a father of 3, sometimes I find it a bit difficult to find time. As Johannes, you know as well, sometimes it's a bit hectic.
Absolutely,
yeah. But and also one big thing, or kind of a difference between 22 and 23, is that I started doing, not too many, but I started doing on-site deliveries as well.
Yeah.
And Johannes, you are very familiar with on-site deliveries because you started before pandemic, and most of the deliveries were on-site, right?
Yeah, that's kind of a point that we could maybe address. So a lot of the instructor-led teaching business was on-site deliveries only. And then that was kind of back then in the training community, it was seen as being that differentiator from those online videos, right? So in general, in the business, when you want to learn, I don't know, architecting on AWS, right? Your options are to do an in-person kind of a training with a trainer, instructor-led training for about 3 days, and you're going to pay, between $2,000 and $3,000 or euros for that. Or your other option is to go to Udemy and pay $10 for a video course, an on-demand based video course. So back then, the idea was that we would kind of say that live training, when you're there with the instructor in the same space, is a lot better. It's a lot more effective, and it allows the participants to kind of go away from their normal job and then just concentrate on training. Whereas if you would do the same thing on demand video, then it's kind of intervening with your work, and nobody knows how long it's going to take, and so on. So that was kind of the idea. And then COVID happened, so that stopped. So then they kind of had to reinvent training. So we started to do online live training, and the story changed, right? So now it's about the personality of the instructor, the interactivity between an instructor and the students. That is really the point. And for us instructors, this of course made life a lot easier, right?
No traveling.
Yeah, previously,
for example.
Yeah, like especially if we have international travel, if you have a 3-day course, you basically need to fly in the day prior to the first day. And then if you're lucky, you can fly out on the evening of the last day, but it might very well be that you need to spend one more night. So it's actually a 5-day week, and we're paid for 3, kind of. So it's all very effective. On the other hand, then we would do all kinds of other stuff in hotel rooms and airplanes and airports and wherever we would spend our times in. Whereas now with the virtual training, I literally get to the office half an hour before the training starts, and then I usually even leave before the end of the evening, because we're leaving a lab as the last activity of the day. And we can also work on other stuff during breaks or lab time, which we really couldn't do on-prem when we would be doing a live delivery. So it changed a lot. It also changed the way that we have to do instruction, right? Things that work live don't work over the camera in a similar way. So that has changed a little bit. But just as we kind of got used to doing these online trainings, then, as you said, last year it kind of started a little bit late 2022. We started to see requirements to do live on-premises trainings again. And I had almost forgotten how much more fun it is. It's so much more interactive. You get to use your personality a lot more. You get to go to lunch together with the students and talk like off the record.
And you actually take a longer lunch break yourself.
Yeah, or maybe even
not
take
just
a
5
beer
minutes.
after the day, right? So it's you get a much deeper connection with the students, and at least for me, the feedback has been a lot better for the live appearances compared to the online ones.
And for me, traveling when you don't do that, when you don't do traveling too often, it's fun. But when you start to do it often, then of course it's a chore, and it's not that fun anymore. You have to be away from your family, and you're spending time in different kinds of places, like hotels and the airport and traveling. But anyway, I was lucky that one of my deliveries was actually 5 minutes away from my home by foot. So I did actually a couple of deliveries for for a client that was basically next door to me. That was
That's
kind
good
of
luck.
that's good luck, yeah. But also I think my first delivery was to Norway almost exactly a year ago that I did. Yeah, good memories from that, and it's completely different from to deliver online and or on site. And I don't have any background in kind of like performing to large audiences and as a speaker, and
Ah,
that's fun to realize that actually it's, even though it is scary in the beginning before you go to the very first client, it's quite scary, but it's actually not that scary once you start talking. So
yeah.
that was fun. Okay, so that's the beginning of the year was like that. I did a lot of studies. Mm, I'm a curious person. I like to find out how things work. It's not only that I need to like know in theory how things work, but I try to, as often as possible, I will really have to get my hands on the services and configure them and start them and once you do that, you realize that, oh, I have no idea how this thing works. And but I've been doing that a lot in the past year. Um, so yeah, I made time for my studies without neglecting my family, I hope. Maybe a little bit stealing time from my other hobbies. I do photography and rock climbing. Of course, when you have a busy schedule, it's always away from something when you do something extra. I completed 3 new certifications from AWS side. Databases specialty, data analytics specialty, and advanced architecting, and
Architecting Pro.
or solutions architect professional.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And you're hoping to do the machine learning one as well?
yeah, the machine learning, I'm studying currently for machine learning specialty. Probably going to do it within a month or so.
That's what you
And
said a
that's
month ago.
about a month. Yeah, yeah. You can ask me in 4 weeks if I have
All right.
completed my studies and I have the new certification. And that's actually one thing that happened in the past year also. Artificial intelligence was talked everywhere you go. It's it's all over the place. Artificial intelligence, machine learning. Of course, it has been around for a very long time, but it's like the blockchain of the past years that everybody started talking about blockchain and business people tried desperately to figure out how they can use blockchain in their business. And I think the same is happening with AI and machine learning. And of course, there are lots of good use cases for both. And not referring to blockchain now, but so we probably are going to do a lot of talking regarding AI this
Yeah.
year.
So that's kind of what I was thinking about last year. Gen AI
Yeah,
specifically. That was 2023 was the year of generative AI. Um, it's interesting because in general when we are like we instructors or professionals, we're kind of insiders for our industry, the IT industry, and normally we can see these things coming like from miles away, right? But Gen AI, the speed with which it was taken up really surprised me. You know, ChatGPT, the
13
first
months ago.
demo of ChatGPT was late in 2022, so just about a little bit over 1 year ago.
Yeah, 13 months ago or
Yeah, and
ish.
and the main topic for all of the big player conferences was Gen AI.
Yep.
That's crazy.
and that started to be like, it sounded almost like a joke that everybody was talking about it, like in reInvent that we visited in late last year. It was they I think they should have coordinated a little bit their speeches so that not everybody is starting with how important the AI stuff is, because when you just repeat it all the time, then it's starts
be
to be a
honest,
little boring from the spectator point of view.
to be honest, in reInvent it was still bearable. In Google Next, it was the only topic for the
Okay,
whole
okay,
thing.
okay, okay.
So it was like
I
even
didn't
worse.
I didn't visit that.
Yeah.
One was Google Next.
Sorry?
When was this?
August, end of August.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was horrible. I was like literally trying to scrape through content to find if there is anything else than
anything else than AI. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's an interesting thing. AWS came a little bit late to the game, right? So, but then they created a really interesting product with Bedrock, kind of not taking a position on which LLM you should use, but rather, saying, okay, here is everything. Just use the one that you like most. So that's fairly interesting. The rest of the cloud hyperscalers are pushing their own product first, which is understandable.
Yeah,
that kind of also explains the difference between AWS and the other cloud hyperscalers. So that the other ones usually tell you that there's kind of one way to do things, like use this product for this specific use case, and then AWS is like, well, we have 5 different products, and pick the one that suits you best.
Exactly, and to taking a step a little bit further back than 2023, I actually got into in my studies in the late 90s and early 2000. I actually bought the book that is I'm sharing the book there now, Neural and Adaptive Systems. And I actually remember, Johannes, talking with you about this like 20 plus years ago, and you were even more skeptical about the system neural networks than I was, and I remember that. Okay, I will prove it how it works, and I remember not completing that that proof, and so I had a really good opportunity 20 plus years ago to kind of jump into this topic early on, but the computers were not that powerful back then, and it was more about theory than like real practical things that we were able to do.
That was the reason for my skepticism, right?
Yeah.
And of course, then I later on jumped.
Remember when we had this discussion back? Well, not the details, but
yeah.
But then I revisited the subject 2010 in the University of Helsinki when I complete, or 2009 when I had I actually did check for for our presentation here. I did check that I completed 2009 an introduction to AI in the University of Helsinki. And it would be fun to go back and visit the course material, what was talked about then about the topic. And then 2011, I took the Coursera course, machine learning. I don't remember the name of the course, but it was. So I had a second really good opportunity to jump into this and be an expert on this field, and I did not do it. So now I'm. This is my third try now, trying to really get into AI. Not because I also have to do it, but also I want to do it. Like personally and professionally, I want to, of course, master the topic.
Yeah,
so I failed twice to master the topic there, but let's hope now I'm going to be an expert. But not now.
Your course was Introduction to Machine Learning by Hannes Wettig.
Probably.
Yeah, Matti Vuorinen was the assistant on that one. But yeah, I think we can even find the course book was an introduction to statistical learning by James and Witten. It's used R.
Yeah, we had something to do with we did some exercises with R. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Okay,
I thought
interesting.
I
Go
was
ahead.
teaching
Go ahead.
that course later on, like
Oh yeah.
4 or 5 years later. Yeah.
Okay, so AI was one of the big things in 2023. Other highlights for me, mm, well, reInvent was a big thing for me because it was the first time I was taking a part of such a huge conference. We did discuss about that a couple of weeks ago, so we don't have to go into the details of that now again. But that was a really, really, really good conference. Like again, professionally and personally as well. So it gave me a lot of motivation to continue and deepen my knowledge. And we made a lot of contacts there, and hopefully we are continuing with those people who we met and doing things together with these new acquaintances.
Yep. For me, I have one more technological thing that maybe not many people realized. But quantum computing has done some major breakthroughs in 2023. So for me, quantum computing used to be a fairly theoretical concept. So similar, I've taught a course at the university regarding quantum computing. So I kind of know the theory, and we did some, by hand calculations on how different algorithms work. And then at that time, and basically during the previous years, we didn't really have any real multi-qubit quantum computers available. So we had some online services that would allow you to use a quantum computer, but most of those would actually be running based on simulations only, for basically making sure that your algorithm works. But in 2023, actually multiple high qubit implementations of a quantum computer were published. One of them is actually in Finland, and it uses the expertise of the cold laboratory in Otaniemi in Aalto University. To be
And
able
they are
to,
doing some Finnish companies doing the cooling systems. They have, right?
yeah, it's based from the university, the Aalto University
Yeah.
cold laboratory. They used to have like the coldness record, like some millicentigrades away from absolute zero or something like that.
Yeah.
So they're using that to keep the quantum state, basically. So to get superconductivity and so on. And then there are other interesting ones. Like IBM created a 2100 qubit system. Where we need to
2100.
say that,
Okay.
yeah, we need to say that they're not all entangled. So they are not a true 2100 qubit system, but it's already a pretty big system
I have a
for
question.
Yep.
How many qubits you would need to be able to break the secure transmissions between computers, like
Depends on the key size.
but give
Roughly,
some estimate.
roughly the number of bits in the key.
Okay.
Like it depends on the algorithm that you use. But
So
like
for how
naively,
long for how long the current encryption systems work, like from
well,
that quantum
right,
computing
we're
point?
moving over to 2K keys now, I think, slowly with DLS and everything.
Mhm.
So that will still be available until roughly 2000 qubit systems are available. But it's not really that simple. You can use a smaller amount of qubits to speed up the calculations anyway. But and for people who don't know quantum computing, kind of in general, if you think of an exponential problem, like encryption,
Mhm.
where it starts to breaking encryption gets exponentially harder as
Harder.
the key size increases. With quantum computing, that exponentiality becomes linear. So that's basically the thing. So due to that, it starts to become easier to break the current types of.
Yeah. So are we going to see some new kind of encryption?
Yes.
Because of quantum computing.
Yes, and it's already there.
Is it already practical? Can you actually use that already?
Yeah. It's so the how should I explain? We could maybe have a show on quantum computing, but like in a short way, the current way that we're doing encryption can be attacked using a quantum algorithm. So an algorithm that requires a quantum computer to run on, and it can solve or break that encryption in linear time instead of exponential time. So that's kind of the setting. So what we're doing right now is we're not fixing encryption against quantum computing, but we're fixing the encryption against that particular algorithm, right? So at least that algorithm cannot be used, and then it seems to be open until somebody figures out a different algorithm that they can use to break that next.
The challenge here, probably, I'm not an expert on this field, but the challenge here is probably not when you're communicating with or you have secure communication between two systems and you change the algorithm or the key size, then you're safe for a while. But if the messages and the data that you're transferring is such that it is relevant even afterwards, and if it's encrypted, somebody listens to the traffic and can record that, and then they can decrypt the messages afterwards, then that's a big problem, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
maybe after 10 years or 15 years later, you can decrypt the messages, and that can be dangerous. So that's probably a kind of a challenge, and that's why we are increasing the key sizes early on, maybe changing the algorithms so that
And that's
the
why
most secure communication stays secure even afterwards.
Yeah, and that's why we're not like using permanent authorization keys or tokens, because somebody could record the TLS encrypted transmission and then just brute force it, and then they'll have the key. So if the key itself is temporary, then most likely it's already no longer usable.
But from the regular user's point of view, probably not a problem at at the moment, at least. So yeah, that's going to change or evolve over time, and we will just have to update our computer and software as time goes by, and then that's probably okay. Anything else? I had a few things here as well. One more thing, at least, for when it comes to programming, I've been using Java since late 90s.
Stone Age stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Version 1.1, I think, was the first. 1.2, I don't remember the exact version numbers anymore.
1.1.7 and 1.1.8.
Probably the earlier one.
1.1.8 was when the IBM JDK came out.
It could have been that. I remember the project that I was doing. The first commercial project was using DB2 as the database. So we did have IBM tooling then. Maybe that's. Anyway, that's not the thing.
Just remember Visual Age with warmth.
Yeah, Visual Age for Java. Yeah, that was the first proper IDE that I used for for Java, which evolved into
Eclipse.
Yeah. But so I've been using Java for a very long time, and 99% of the stuff that I've done professionally has been with Java. Of course, you do a lot of other things there as well, like scripting frameworks and all kinds of things. But last year, I started to look into Python as well. Of course, I've been using Python earlier, and once you're fluent with, like you're a professional programmer or software developer, of course, you can pretty much read any programming language. It doesn't take that long to, maybe not to master the topic, but you can really
Yeah, it's more
do
about the
basic stuff
library
with
than.
any language. Just after one weekend, you're already quite fluent with that.
Yeah,
But
I always say it's more about the libraries that you use.
yeah,
That's what differs, not the syntax of the programming language. That's irrelevant.
but still, I've been looking into Python. Probably one reason is that the AI machine learning stuff. Python has a lot of good libraries there
Mhm.
for written for Python, and the solutions are quite simple. When you're using Python, you can write like efficient code from the user point of view, not from the machine point of view. We did discuss about this earlier,
Mhm.
that Python is a horrible solution if you want to think about the environment, in that sense that it consumes a lot of compute resources. But from the implementer point of view, the programmer point of view, it's uh, quite refreshing that you are writing just with few lines of code. You can do a lot of things, but of course you are then uh, dependent on the libraries and all that. So it's in good and bad.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that's one thing that I did, and it's kind of a refreshing change from just using Java for everything, regardless of what the problem is. I was using Java, and now maybe more open to using other languages as well.
yeah. It's like literally, why is Python that much used in machine learning and data analytics? Well, it's because the libraries exist for
Yep.
Python. So like the basics, there is NumPy, which is a kind of a vector um, vectorization library, and it actually has all of the original lintback methods implemented. Lintback was the original kind of mathematics, linear mathematics, linear algebra mathematics package available in Fortran originally. And that NumPy was kind of a Python wrapper around those heavily optimized linear algebra implementations. And it was there from the start. So people started to use it, right? So it was easy to approach. And then on top of NumPy, we then got SciPy, that kind of brought some scientific computation based on the effective vector-based computations of NumPy. And in there, we then got, for example, scikit-learn, which is an open source machine learning library. And basically, all of the machine learning that we're doing nowadays, independent of what library we're really using, is we're mimicking the scikit-learn way of using this, because people were so used to that.
So
So
it's about
it's
tooling.
yeah, it's
Once you have the tools, you don't have to know about the details.
I,
It doesn't. It's not a bad thing if you know about the details, but even when you do know about the details, in the long run, you're going to use some libraries, and
yeah,
not
and
very
if,
often you implement everything by yourself.
exactly. And if people are thinking that it sounds kind of funny that we're on the one hand saying that Python is ineffective, and then on the other hand, we're using Python to do something like machine learning that requires a lot of computation, then that's not
Yeah.
exactly true. We're only using Python for the kind of high level stuff, the instructions on what type of machine learning you want to do, and then the actual frameworks that then do the actual computations. They are highly optimized in
Yeah.
machine code
The
on
bulk of the
GPUs
work
and stuff.
is really optimized.
Yeah, yeah. It's just the kind of high level stuff that is using pure Python.
Interestingly, my daughter, who's going to be 12 in about 2 weeks, is starting to in school starting to do programming, and I'm really interested to see what are the
Which
tools
platform?
and sorry.
Which platform?
Yeah, I have no idea yet. So yeah,
Okay.
but I'm really interested to see what the platform is, and also interested to figure out if I can not intervene with with, with, uh, with the stuff.
So
But,
my
yeah,
daughter,
that's going to be interesting.
my daughter is already 12, just turned about a month ago, and she's been doing code.org
Yep.
stuff. So there is in the beginning there is no writing of code. It's more about logic and then
Yep.
understanding order of execution and that kind of stuff. And she really liked that. So
Yeah, I hope my daughter will like that as well. It's she had an opportunity to choose between the extra topics that they're going to study, like this second half of the semester, and she actually chose this by herself. So I didn't have any say on that.
she's just hoping for a nice Christmas present there.
Yeah. Uh, okay, so a little bit about programming. Yeah, what else? I did finish one huge photography project last year. It was called 100 Strangers. I invited people who I do not know beforehand. I invited them to my studio, and we took beautiful portraits. And that was one huge, and also happy that I got that out of the way as well. Of course, I have another project going on at the moment, but it has not been completed yet.
You gotta follow his Instagram.
Yeah, maybe we put that link there. What else? How about you? How did you feel your workload for let's say the first half and the second half of 2023?
So yeah, we got a new family member, a baby, late 2022, the 28th of December. So the beginning of 2023 was lots of baby stuff. Yeah.
Hectic.
So, yeah, and still, there's a big difference between having 2 and 3 kids, especially if one of them is a baby, because our second youngest or middle kid is 4, turning 5 now. So she's young enough still to need quite a lot of support every time. So handling both the baby and her is already kind of a full-time job for 2 persons. And then we still have the 12-year-old as well that kind of gets neglected then,
Yeah.
right? So that kind of surprised me that yeah, parenting doesn't scale very nicely.
Oh, I find the opposite. I have 3 kids as well, and 2 kids was hard, and 3 kids, especially after the divorce that I had. Well, it's okay once the youngest is old enough to not need attention all the time. So
Yeah,
it's fun until I've heard that when they are teenagers, it starts to get a little bit harder again. But I'm enjoying the time right now.
all right, cool. Yeah.
What else? What was the or did you find any new services in 2023 that kind of I don't know, that you're, for example, using that you didn't use before, or something that you feel that this is going to be big?
There are quite a lot of things that happened, like on the Google side. If we think about that first, then Antos starts to be we start to see people really using that. Then we have BigQuery and BigQuery Omni. BigQuery Omni is the possibility to run BigQuery in a different cloud. So if you're previously, the problem was that if your data lake is on S3 in AWS, then of course you could still run your analytics using BigQuery, but the data transfer costs would be horrendous because you need to export all of the data from S3 into Google Cloud first. So Omni is a way for you to actually run BigQuery on AWS, so that you can do local data and then just transfer the results, which hopefully is a smaller data set than the
Yeah, yeah.
original one, right? So that was a kind of a big thing for me. Then also in Google, Looker got more integrated. Looker is a BI tool that Google purchased from a company, or they purchased a company called Looker. And then what Google did is what they always do, is that they changed all of their kind of visualization tools to be called Looker, right? So all of the metrics visualizations that we used to have on Google Cloud, those part of Stackdriver, is now called Looker as well. So now everybody's really confused about what Looker really is. Did the same thing for the AI stuff. So previously we had different kinds of AI services. Now everything is called Vertex, and nobody really knows what that is. So that was kind of interesting on that side. On the AWS side, I finally got into SageMaker Studio. This is due to the fact of our course materials. We didn't have any proper course materials on SageMaker Studio before. And then finally we got that, and I'm really happy that we're there. It was a little bit kind of embarrassing to refer to the old SageMaker notebooks when everybody would actually want to be using SageMaker Studio instead. And then there's SageMaker Canvas now, which is an even more integrated tool. It starts to look a little bit like the Azure machine learning stack. Azure started off with this very user-friendly, like minimal machine learning knowledge required type of user interface. We just kind of drag and drop things into a pipeline, and then it'll just work. So now, a couple of years later, AWS is finally kind of getting there as well. Previously, their stuff was very technical. It's very good, but you really needed to know how to use it.
So how do you feel? Is it a good or bad thing if suddenly, well, not suddenly, but a lot more of the workforce is able to use like
So
AI
this is the
or
same,
machine learning? How do you feel about that without having too much background?
It's the same argument as with Gen AI, right? So with coding with Gen AI, right? So one thing with Gen AI when you're coding is that, well, you can just ask your Gen AI to create code for you. But then does that mean that code is of the required quality and so on, right? So
exactly,
in professional environments, it's not about getting rid of the developer, but it's more about the developer not having to use as much time to put all the scaffolding in place, and then just kind of concentrate on the real deal. It's similar in machine learning with AutoML or whatever you want to call it, right? So now with AutoML, instead of you having to do all of the data massaging and all of that stuff yourself, you can concentrate on stuff that is more important, like bias detection, making sure that your source data is correct, and then analysis of the results. So the kind of attention of a machine learning specialist goes away from the actual algorithms that are being used to train models, and it goes towards like data and stuff like bias. How can we figure out whether or not this decision is biased based on us having some kind of data? I think my favorite example is that we're doing like loan applications, home loan applications or something like that. And then in our data about the applicants, we have one field that says when the military service was completed, right? And that introduces bias, because women will not have, or a lot less of the women will have that field filled in. So then when we're using that kind of data as a training data, we need to identify that this is, even though the information might be interesting, it is actually biasing, and we need to make sure that it doesn't have biasing effect on the predictions themselves, right? So that kind of stuff, that's what we can now concentrate on. And there are plenty of examples, like funny examples regarding this. Like there's this university department that created a face recognition algorithm for their lab door, right? So whenever somebody from the lab would come, it would unlock the door automatically, and that worked
Only for
well.
men?
Sorry.
Did it work only for men?
Yeah, so like
I'm just guessing
there
here.
were no women present. So when once the first woman got there, it stopped working. Same thing, we need to take care of people with different backgrounds, right? Just making sure that we have a good, or then they didn't have enough negative examples, so somebody could just hold up a picture of a face of somebody, and then that will unlock the door, right? So my point is that the people who use machine learning, they will need to start to think about these kinds of higher level things, whether I have enough negative examples versus positive examples, whether the sample space is representative of reality, and that kind of stuff, instead of thinking about how machine learning actually works.
Yeah. So not worry about the details, but then actually having to understand how machine learning works, and
and that's
can focus on higher level stuff. And one thing that for me kind of changed was databases last year. For just a quick recap, when you're using a database and you're as old as I am, it's always a relational database. End of story. That's it. And that with that attitude and with that background, last year was an eye opener for the other database options as well. Of course, as an instructor, I've been learning about non-relational databases and things like that. But then they are more than just a relational database and a non-relational database. There are lots of different kinds of databases that are actually valid options for certain use cases. And that's also one thing from last year that, well, as services, they didn't change, but I got involved with those other databases, and that was actually a really good thing. But you've been running the database courses for a long time, so that didn't change. But from the database point of view, was there something last year that was new? If you ignore the reinvent, the things that were
for me, the new thing was the data API. That's a really, really cool thing, and it's going to. So again, to kind of explain things, traditionally when you're connecting to a database, a relational database, you're making a consistent connection, so usually a JDBC or ODBC connection to that database, and that runs on TCP/IP, right? So you have an ongoing connection, and then you're sending your commands to the database, and it'll reply back to you. And this works nicely. This is kind of a basic client-server architecture, right? And it works nicely if we have a traditional application where we maybe have a multitude of application servers, and then each of them will do a connection pool back to the database. And then we have, maybe tens of simultaneous connections on the database, which is easy to handle. But if we move over to a modern architecture where we would be using, for example, Lambda functions, then we could have hundreds or even thousands of clients to the same database. And that database is going to, get swamped just by the amount of connections.
And they are short connections. They are not ongoing.
Yeah, the problem is that. Yeah, the problem is that the connection, you want to reuse the connection in a Lambda function, right? Because it takes time to open up. So if you get a warm start, you want to reuse it. But the problem is that there is no hook when the Lambda gets deleted. So if you have the connection there and the Lambda gets deleted, it will never be reused, but it's still open on the server side until it times out. So that's kind of the problem there. And how do we solve that? Well, we used to have a proxy implementation. So a proxy that would then batch the incoming connections to a connection pool, and that way control that the database at least doesn't need to have that many connections open. But now the data API basically allows us to use an HTTP REST API to send commands to the database. So we're going to use it in a similar way as we're using, for example, DynamoDB, right?
Yep.
And that's really cool because now the database doesn't need to scale with the number of connections. Rather, it's the AWS infrastructure that does that scaling on your behalf.
And you don't have to worry about the database, the drivers.
Exactly, that as well. Yeah.
The database drivers was a huge pain in the past when you were trying to connect to a new database, and you had to find the specific driver that worked with the language that we are using. For me, of course, it was always Java, but still you had to find the correct the driver. And when you were deploying your application to an application server, then that application server also had to have that the correct version of the correct driver. And yeah, that was
and those
not
drivers
not so fun.
Didn't always fully support the wire protocol, right? So in the wire protocol, there would be things like cursor control. Like you could, instead of downloading all of the results at once, you could keep a cursor open in the result set on the server side, and then basically select which parts of the result set you want to fetch at what kind of rate. And then a lot of the open source drivers didn't actually support anything like that, anything fancy, or any special commands. Like Postgres didn't do proper loading of data from disk in the original open source driver, which was kind of horrible. There's so many things that we needed to worry about back then. So all of that is kind of gone. Of course, there's going to be a little bit more latency with HTTP. But compared to a cold start, it should at least not be as much. And then the other great thing is authentication, right? Because now you can do the authentication using IAM against the data API, so you don't need to have any usernames or passwords they're going to be using for the actual data connection to the
you can with AWS you can use IAM for authentication for
it's a bit of a clutch. It's token based. So what you do then is you get a token.
There are limitations there. How many? It was 200 per second, or what was the?
Yeah. So the problem is it's token based, right? So instead of using a username and password, you're going to use a token, and that comes from probably from STS or something like that. So with your IAM identity, you first go and get the token, and then you use that token to connect to the database, and then the database needs to go and verify that token again for it to work.
There's a little bit extra latency.
Yeah, and it's a little bit tricky.
Quite often, the systems that I've been building, it's not about the absolute speed. It's about having the correct business logic. So from my point of view, that extra little bit of latency has never been the real problem. Our problems have been like buggy implementation of business logic or something like that. But of course, for other use cases where maybe you have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands concurrent users, then and you want to reduce everything, like just as small latencies as possible, then it's actually not about how many clients you have. But if you have a system that's really real time instead of kind of more laid back, and you get your results when you get them, that's completely different kinds of systems there.
Yeah, but it's still latency always then results in queuing delays. So
yeah.
Kind of, you, even though latency would be okay for your business logic, then if your throughput rate rises, then due to the latency, you're going to have performance problems quicker than without latency. That's another thing we could sometimes talk about, how latency affects software scalability. Not only the end user that doesn't like things taking for too long, but that's actually the software itself that might get into trouble because of latency.
Exactly. We're not running out of time, but we've been rambling about almost an hour.
Yeah.
Anything I'm not in a rush here, but do you have anything else in mind?
Not really. Just trying to write down that as a possible topic as a
Yeah.
future.
We have an endless list of things to
Yeah,
discuss.
another thing I'd like to talk about is CQRS and how that helps with exactly that kind of problem that we were just talking about.
Yep.
And then maybe microservices transaction rollback problems. This could be an interesting topic. So distributed transaction rollback, how to implement that.
I can tell already that it's not simple.
No, no. One of the reasons why not to use microservices.
Yeah. Hey, actually, what do you think if you just quickly think about this year, 2024? What is there something that you think, like 1 year from now, we're talking about what happened 2023, 24? Then do you have any predictions or things that you
Yeah. So
like to?
it seems that Gen AI is going to, or LLMs, if we want to
Yeah.
be like professionals here, LLMs are going to be more widely used. The president or CEO of NVIDIA was one of the main guests in both AWS reInvent and in Google Next, explaining how many GPUs or accelerants they have sold to the different cloud environments. So
That
everybody's
was a
kind
huge
of,
number,
yeah, like
billions.
several exacomputers worth. So it seems that everybody's ready for doing custom LLMs. So that's probably going to be interesting next year. Now, of course, this is limited to very large organizations. It's very expensive to create these LLMs. But finding that kind of threshold over when you're using a pre-trained LLM and then do additional training onto it, or when to start off from a totally new untrained LLM instead. That's going to be really interesting for like really big companies. Like when should they consider training everything from scratch?
I see huge problems from the security point of view there as well.
Well,
Like,
copyright.
Yeah, not only that, but I mean, like from cybercrime side.
Yeah,
That's
there is also the problem of leaking source data via the model itself, because the model is so big that you can't inspect it
yeah.
manually. So we've already seen some examples of that kind of leakage.
And I did check actually yesterday. I was looking at how good AWS was at generating speech from text, and the model currently produced really plausible Finnish as well, not just English, which is like the obvious starting point. And I can see huge problems there when the models start to get more and more plausible. Then it starts to get really difficult to tell if you're talking over phone. Is this a real person that you're talking to? The other person could be talking a different language, and it just in real time translates that into another language, and you don't have any idea.
Yeah, that's kind of the good thing about knowing a language that not many people know. It's like you can immediately tell if somebody is native or not.
Currently, yeah, you can, but in the future, it will be harder and harder, especially if you're expecting someone to speak English and then you're receiving English. Right.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Should we call it a morning or
Yeah,
day?
or day for
Afternoon?
me. It's
Yeah.
about 3 o'clock now for me.
Okay.
Let's do so. Let's see if I can. I fail. I'm not sure if I failed to play the intro video, but let's see if I can play the outro.
Okay, fair enough. Bye.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.